Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling quote unquote crazy GOP slash Ginni Thomas colon ideology and politics normalizing dangerous mental illness. So, this is a more general approach to a topic that I've been discussing lately about um, the using the framework of abnormal psychology or psychopathology to talk about political events and also the dangers facing the American Republic currently. And that the most sort of the immediate these are topics I think about on and off for now, many years. But my background, my academic background is in clinical psychology, or among other things. So I do have that toolbox, so to speak, to look at or microscope or whatever lens to look at events through that perspective. But I think it seems unavoidable, though. I don't. One doesn't need to be committed to this as itself an ideology or a professional or academic pursuit to notice that craziness is multiplying within the public sphere. Craziness, and I'm using that in a colloquial sense. It's not a technical word, but it's what the word we use to notice colloquially in our quote unquote folk psychology. In other words, the psychology of everyday language, to notice when people are acting in ways that are certainly hard for us to interpret, and also that seem potentially dangerous, or if not to us, at least to them, to those people. And though there are, mental illness and psychopathology includes many non-dangerous, troubling but non-dangerous phenomena, and associated with some diagnoses, but there are also dangerous ones as well, and there are different types of danger associated with different pathologies. So, but anyway, we just are. It seems like it's the elephant in the room to me, not to describe and raise the alarm about how our public life has been made, again, using colloquially the word crazy or nutty, or out of touch with reality. So this is one dimension of serious mental illness, is that one is out of touch with consensual or everyday reality. Now, there are two levels to this. So one is, one could have a society where consensual, in other words, what people think as a collective are things that are true, could be in fact be false in some objective sense, or they could be unhealthy and misleading and dysfunctional. So to be out of touch with that reality might be a sign, in fact, of health, that one is out of touch with some, consensual reality. For instance, in the 1950s, it was considered to be, just using a very, unfortunately now, a relevant idea, but it was considered to be out of touch with the quote unquote consensus of the 1950s, or the consensus of the 1950s, to think of homosexuality as a healthy option or orientation for human beings. But, we have come to accept that, at least the mental health professions, and also, much of the political spectrum, and it certainly it became a consensus position that in fact it was a healthy option for human beings. And so that's a way in which that's a very specific form of consensual reality that became something that that changed over time. But then, but I can think of more recent things which are still part of our consensual reality now, that are things that I think are ultimately unhealthy. And for instance, in the United States, the assumption that it's normal and okay to drive large, to drive oversized vehicles, that are way beyond the our needs as as families, as individuals, to get transportation from, and that we feel the compulsion, the need to buy these things because of image and or maybe a once a year use in some off-roading context, or anyway. But we have this, and then there's also the issue of using fossil fuels and overusing fossil fuels for based on the way our infrastructure is, our way our lives are structured here. So anyway, there's a consensual reality that is not necessarily sustainable or healthy for us to have. But putting those aside for the time being, those which I think I can make the case based on an objective reality that they are unhealthy, and so there's a reality behind the social reality, that the society can have agreements that need to be changed based on a reality out there. And not everybody is, I don't want to make special claims for myself, but I'm someone who has thought more about the physical reality underneath that supports our society more than the average person, not necessarily more than everybody, but than the average American, certainly. And so I am seeing where the social reality and the natural reality, or the physical reality, are in conflict with each other. So I can make a case for X, Y, or Z being quote unquote crazy for our long-term survival based on those observations. But anyway, so I'm sort of making way for this argument about, or this observation about individuals in the Republican Party who are powerful, who are part of the consensus of the Republican Party, who appear to be, or not only appear to be, who are denying obvious realities based on their own personal interests and their own ideology and their own sense of entitlement to power. And for instance, the immediate occasion for me to return to this topic is the discovery of Ginni Thomas's text to Mark Meadows, and also the more investigation that goes into her relationship, and also Clarence Thomas, his likely agreement with her about, in terms of beliefs, at least her claims that Clarence Thomas, who is one of 9 Supreme Court justices, and therefore sitting at the heart of American power, and then his wife being a very, very influential, partly due to his position, being a very influential political activist within the Republican Party and within the far right, that her belief that the election was stolen, that, for instance, she believed that, apparently sincerely, that Joe Biden would be, sent to Guantanamo, and the Biden family was a crime family, and that they would be, tried in military tribunals for the election fraud that they had perpetrated, when there was no evidence to suggest this happened. So this is part of a folie à plusieurs, a madness of many, which has individual components to it. In other words, each individual who participates in this folly of many, or in this madness of many. There's a folie à deux, that means the craziness of two. Folie à plusieurs, I think I'm saying that right, but anyway, maybe I'm not. But of many, the madness of many, or group psychosis, okay, of the that is generated by certain ideologies. So there's a group psychosis which is about being detached from reality within the group, certainly, and which individuals, or how individuals participate in that group psychosis, is something that is beyond this particular video. But one could, if one was interested, or if these people were being sought or being interviewed by people who were sensitive to these things, or who had professional background to analyze, how in touch, or to be tested, essentially, to go under psychological testing or whatever it is, to figure out whether they're just sort of swept up in a group craziness, okay, but they don't that they're actually, quote unquote, not as crazy, not psychotic, basically. So psychotic is a particular level of craziness where you deny reality and you live in an alternate reality. So certainly politically, then, there is an alternate reality. It's probably likely that these people are not hallucinating to such a degree that they can't drive a car, for instance, or at least many of them are not in that situation. So that's having a psychotic disorder that involves hallucinations. So that is something that is not so widespread in the population, not as widespread as these political psychoses. Okay, so anyway, it's hard not to apply this lens to what's going on, because you have this continual efforts to sustain this illusion or delusion about it seems to revolve a lot around the 2020 election and currently, but this could be shifted to other events, and it has crept to other events. So it's not just a singular event, but that seems to be something that triggered this group psychosis. Now, it was led by the figure of Donald Trump. So Donald Trump plays a key role in this particular folie à plusieurs, okay? And he is he is the leader, the charismatic leader of this cult, okay? This cult that is involved in this group psychosis, kind of like the Jonestown cult, except much, much bigger. Okay. And so these members of this cult, including Ginni Thomas, okay, have these false beliefs that they act according to these false beliefs. And it seems as though a lot of it has to do with power hunger and a lot of very, very negative social attitudes that they have. And now this is my opinion, but a lot based on the standard of U.S. society, even including these are people who are racists, but who feel who don't want to be accused of racism because they, as racist as they don't want to be acknowledged their racism. There's something about being a racist that, at least for most of them, is a bridge too far in terms of not being the racist, but being called the racist. So they apparently they don't want to be publicly seen as racist, maybe perhaps because they think it means that they're sort of they're weak and I don't know. I'm not actually clear on why it's the bridge too far to be called a racist. That in some sense that is that in a way they're cheating. Okay, that I think it's more that they think that they're inherently valuable people. Okay, and that it's a meritocratic thing for them that they feel superior to um, uh, black people and others, other foreigners or whomever they are demonizing. So racism suggests that it's simply their prejudice and they don't want to think they think that it's about an earned inherent sense of worth that they have, that they're simply higher up on a hierarchy, and that racism suggests that it's not, that it's really it's a attitude that they have that is and also there is still a much of American culture is a mixed race phenomenon, and it's so they would be exiling themselves from their and American sports and America. It's all about enjoying the work really of a multiracial, multi-ethnic society, and so they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to enjoy. They just don't want to hear only white musicians or whatever, or white watch white athletes play. They want to be able to enjoy football or whatever other game that they enjoy watching. So anyway, but this there is this element then of this group psychosis that is very that has become part of normalized by the political ideology. So and that political ideology has a number of components to it. There's the component of white supremacy. There's a component of free market fundamentalism / libertarianism, which or really proprietarianism, which is about the idea, thinking that the property that you own is something that is a sign of your inherent worth, and that you are, and it's all purely justified, whatever property you own, especially if you own a lot of it and a lot more than the average, and also certainly more than the other. If you're white, you tend to be more propertied than people who are of different races. So not exclusively, but so there's a whole series of reasons for holding on to these ideas that the ideology supports the insistence of for instance, that the 2020 election was stolen, was that basically they had this idea that it's really, I mean, some of it is just a mirroring of Donald Trump's psychology, and which gave people the permission. And Donald Trump is a disturbed individual, a megalomaniacal, very narcissistically sensitive individual, and he created a series of permissions and for people who share some of his views of society and of making America great again, and having lost status and feeling persecuted. The status losing is a form of persecution, and also this being centered in culture is a form of persecution, that not everybody, it's not all Leave It to Beaver, it's not all in our culture anymore. So and there's a sense of loss, there's a sense of alienation that comes from some of that, and rather than acknowledging that, there is as a feeling, as something that you would mourn, or you would think, that instead that there's basically an action orientation of and a projection outward of feelings of rage and also that the aggression that you feel toward the anger that you feel, that it's really coming at you, so you push out. You will aggress first because you think you're being aggressed upon. So there's the constant excuse making for doing aggressive and power hungry and dominating things, and based on your sense of having lost something, and so anyway, it's this group psychosis has motivated parts of it that are, you can understand from a sort of a, it's hard to sympathize with it because it's such a negative parts of human psychology that it's based on. It's based on sadism. It's based on, just somewhat infantile psychology. It's based on, a lack of personal responsibility for one's actions. So it seems very, very immature, and Donald Trump himself is a very, very immature character, and so it's inspired many, many people to act in some of their most immature and most irresponsible ways. So, and there's no accountability. So it's a magnification of the individual psychopathology, the individual mental illness of one man, and spread out over a lot of people, as kind of a license to be as immature and act out rather than reflect anything, that rather get in touch with your anger and your frustrations. You lash out at other people, and you become part of a movement that's about lashing out and about nurturing grievances and about keeping the grievance. And so, but this is not all motivated internally. There's an apparatus of media and of ideological groups that are continually feeding this, and they see the value of having this group of people who are constantly in this rage-filled, psychotic, and some of the leaders, like Ginni Thomas, is one of the leaders of this group, but she's not the leader, but she is a key operative in this group, and so but she seems to be almost a true believer in this ideology. But there are people who are sitting behind the scenes, for instance, the Koch brothers, so forth and so on, who see the value of having these shock troops who are threatening really our democracy, due to these feelings of resentment, feelings of being persecuted, and lashing out preemptively based on the fantasy, the massaged and brainwashed fantasies of being below or being lower than the people who are actually lower than you in terms of socioeconomic indicators, and also and just so there's a mass of misinformation and disinformation that keeps people in this state of mind. And there are many layers to it. There are people who act as supposedly objective brokers who say, well, no, that doesn't really exist. That gaslighting and people like Glenn Greenwald, and also this gentleman Paul Thacker, who I had a recent Twitter interaction with, but who sort of are, I don't know, maybe reactionary centrist, maybe not, maybe running interference for this right-wing bubble of misinformation and basically neo-fascist or putschist neo-fascist psychosis. And so the fascism, I really should make clear that what I'm talking about is a form of neo-fascism, that these are people who, and as with the fascism of the mid-20th century, there are psychotic elements to, or they become grievances, become worked into a psychotic framework where certain groups are targeted, and there's lashing out, and there's and violence becomes the language of the movement based on these imaginary, striking out at imaginary and real, or thinking of the real opponents as having some kind of awfulness to them that justifies your violent action, so that you can go ahead and get that release from by doing your violent acts and doing your or putsch, doing the putsch, and grabbing power away by any means necessary. So anyway, so I hope this video is somewhat illuminating, and please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you like the video, or you got anything out of it, please, or something out of it, please like the video, and also please subscribe to Politics 2100 if you are getting something out of these videos. Thanks.